close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport Podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Mick McCarthy's second reign as Ireland manager has come to an end, with former Dundalk boss Stephen Kenny set to formally take over the role on August 1st. But what does this all mean for Bandon's Conor Hourihane and his future in a green shirt? On today's podcast, we'll be joined by Gavin Cooney from thesouthernstarTV to chat about Stephen Kenny's appointment to the top job in Irish football. But first, Kieran, it would be remiss of me not to wish you a happy birthday. What age did you turn today? Was it 21 again?
21 again and add 17, so I'm feeling wiser today, not older, but I'm feeling a lot wiser. It's different having a lockdown birthday, to be quite honest, Jack. I wouldn't really recommend it, but it is what it is. My birthday present was a bunch of flowers. I didn't ask for flowers, but I got flowers, but it is what it is.
And what would your knowledge of flowers be? Could you tell me what the flowers were, or to your eye, are they just a bunch of flowers from a supermarket?
Well, to be fair to her, there's two separate bunches of flowers. One is tulips and one is a little potted plant that she probably wanted, and she probably wanted the tulips too. So she's after killing two birds with one stone. She got herself flowers and got me a present. So in fairness, like she's played a blinder on this one because all the shops are closed, and she had intended to whisk me off my feet to a far-flung destination outside Killarney, but that's all been put on ice for the time being. But yeah, feeling older, wiser. The hair is getting a bit longer. The hair is getting greyer. I'm working in tracksuit pants every day, so life is good, Jack. Life is good.
Yeah, the old comfortable pants isn't the worst thing to come out of self-isolation and lockdown or quarantine or whatever you want to call it. But you mentioned that the shops were closed, and so that's why you were only given a bunch of flowers. You've obviously never heard of the term internet shopping down in Killarney, have you not?
Internet hasn't reached Kerry yet.
That's fair enough. It's unusual then that we are recording this podcast through the internet over Skype, but look, let's not get bogged down in the details. Kieran, you had a chat with Gavin Cooney of the42.ie a little earlier on about Stephen Kenny's appointment to the Ireland job. Gavin covers the Ireland international team for the 42, and before we throw to Gavin and get his thoughts, I just kind of wanted to get a sense of what you think Stephen's appointment means for Conor's Ireland career. He's obviously 29 now, so he's almost 30, so he should really be coming into his peak years at international level. Do you sense that this is a good appointment for Conor?
I think it is, Jack. If you go back with Conor's Ireland career, he got his debut under Martin O'Neill in 2017, but Martin O'Neill was very reluctant to kind of look to Conor in the big games. He came on against Denmark in one game in the playoff for the World Cup, and I think he played one or 2 minutes, only a couple of minutes, and he had a couple of minutes off the bench against Serbia as well. So Martin O'Neill didn't trust Conor in the big games, and that's Martin O'Neill probably had his set of players at the time. Mick McCarthy was a fan of Conor, and Conor did play a lot more under Mick McCarthy, but I still don't think we saw the best of Conor Hourihane with Ireland. Not the Conor Hourihane that we've seen with Barnsley and with Villa, the kind of, I suppose, especially go back to last season when Villa got promoted from the Championship. I think Conor got double-digit goals, and he's like, in terms of creativity, like he's only got double-digit assists in maybe 3 out of the last 5 seasons between Villa and Barnsley. So Conor is a creative force. We didn't see that with Ireland. All we've seen is, I think, 1 goal in 17 games. So the kind of general feeling is that Stephen Kenny's philosophy and the style he'll bring, that we might see the ball kept on the deck a bit more, and that might just play into Conor's hands because he can spot a pass, he can split a defence with that left foot. He's a creative outlet at club level that we haven't seen at international level. So that's what I caught up with Gavin Cooney, was just to chat about that, just to see, is there more to come from Conor? And we both think there is. we're going to chat a bit about, I suppose, the big news story or the big sports story of the last couple of days is Stephen Kenny taking over as Republic of Ireland manager. It's great that we actually have a live breaking sports story too. And just want to see how this impacts Bandon's Conor Hourihane to start off with. Conor is the reigning West Cork Sports Star of the Year. He's West Cork's first ever Premier League footballer. He's West Cork's first ever Irish international. He's West Cork's first ever Irish international goal scorer. So he's big news in West Cork. So just a change of manager, Gavin, for someone like Conor, who's, he's 28, 29 now. Does he have to prove himself all over again, or has he kind of banked up enough credit to kind of be in the mix when Stephen Kenny puts his first squad together?
I think he's to prove himself to Stephen Kenny, but the good news is everyone has to prove themselves to Stephen Kenny. And I think there's no reason why Conor wouldn't benefit from Stephen taking over. I know that Mick mainly probably gave Conor more of a chance than Martin O'Neill or previous Irish managers. But he was still in and out, I mean, McCarthy's plan really was to pick 11 players for that first game in Gibraltar just over a year ago. And he generally stuck with them. Like, that was the plan, to build up cohesion and spirit on the pitch, because, we could argue it's the pragmatic thing to do because there wasn't a whole lot of time on the training field and so on. And there were times when it felt like the ground would have to open up and swallow some people to get them out of that team. But unfortunately, Conor Hourihane was actually one of the very few kind of was in and out under Mick, even regardless of injuries. And there was a sense he contributed, but you always felt there was more from him. He obviously scored that great free kick against Georgia right after the tennis ball protest in what was my sporting highlight of 2019, and now looks like being my sporting highlight of 2020 as well. But like, there's more to come. Then he was in and out. He played, I think, did he play away to Georgia, and he was very poor. But the problem was the whole team was poor. There was times Conor often played to the left and the midfield three, and there's just no cohesion around him. James McLean is tenacious and gives everything, but he can't be he can't be relied upon to be in the same position all the time. You don't know where he's going to pop up, so it's very hard for a midfielder to look well when he doesn't know where McLean or where the forwards are going to be. And there'll be more clarity of understanding on the ball, and there'll be patterns of play in which to impress under Stephen. Players are hamstrung, and it depends on the systems around them that can bring the best out of them. That's a kind of a long-winded answer to say that Conor will have to prove himself, but everyone has to prove himself, because there's an idea out there that Stephen's going to take over now and bring in all the under-21s and get rid of all the old guys. It's not going to happen. Stephen Kenny is he's a winner and he's ruthless. Like, he's not some blind fanatical ideologue who's going to come in and play tiki-taka and try to pass our way around Spain and Germany and then get beaten 4-5-0. It's not going to happen that way. Like, he believes in playing his way because he believes it's a pragmatic style. He believes it's the best way to win matches. But he's gonna, everyone's gonna get a chance, and I think his first squad will be peppered with one or two youngsters, but the core of it will be players who played under Mick McCarthy, and I'd expect Conor Hourihane definitely to be one of those.
You kind of made a great point there, Gavin, that I suppose Conor's been kind of in and out of the Ireland team, and we haven't seen the best of him. If you look at him, I think it's 15, 16 caps he has, and he has that one goal that he got against Georgia, and that was off the back of a man-of-the-match performance away to Gibraltar, I think it was. But when you look at his record for Barnsley and Villa, like, more often than not, Conor gets kind of double-digit goals from midfield. He does carry a goal threat, whether go back to this time at Plymouth, like I said, Barnsley, with Villa, but we haven't seen that with Ireland. He's got that one goal from a free kick, and maybe that's down to where he was used. Kind of, we weren't getting the best out of Conor Hourihane and what he can offer.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the one goal from Georgia came from a set piece, that free kick. Yeah, I mean, McCarthy wanted his, one of the main differences between O'Neill's and McCarthy, and in terms of on the field and how they played, and there were actually very few differences really. That McCarthy really wanted players to get forward and into the box more often. And he, when he talked like that, you got the feeling like he preferred Alan Brown was quite good at that, and Conor maybe wasn't as good as breaking into the box and getting on the end of things. But that job mostly fell to Jeff Hendrick. I mean, if you remember the Denmark game at home, the idea was like they didn't really, there was an idea that they had to win the game. They didn't go out to win it really. They went out to keep it tight and hopefully nick a goal. The team was set up not to have to score more than once rather than to actually win the game, if you think about it that way. And it was Jeff Hendrick that was running beyond David McGoldrick. So I think Hourihane wasn't really given a chance to play that role. And it's not to put all the blame on McCarthy. I think, Hourihane definitely, he wasn't involved in games enough. He can definitely do better. But I wouldn't write off the last year and say he's been a massive disappointment for Ireland, because he was in a system that wasn't necessarily set up to bring the best out of him. And if you look at him at Villa as well, I think he's been a little bit harshly treated at Villa. They just signed so many players, and like he's been kind of sacrificed in midfield to make way for Danny Drinkwater. And you're like, why? Danny Drinkwater, like his career is more or less on hold. He's not a serious footballer at the moment. And Hourihane owes Villa, has been great for Villa. And I think he can feel a little bit hard done by there. But yeah, I think, he can definitely do more. And I think Hourihane will be the first to admit. I always find it interesting talking to him. I know these are at press conferences and so on. And you're hoping to, you ask him about Villa, and, we would have talked to him around the time they got promoted and got into the Premier League. And you're like, Conor, this must be, you went to, was it Sunderland, and then dropped down the leagues and work back up. This must be a crowning moment. You must be very proud. And he'd say, yeah, it's good, but come on, kick on now. He's not satisfied with just spending a season in the Premier League. He wants to be successful. He wants to be a regular Ireland international, and he'll get the chance. Stephen is going to give everyone a chance. Like, he's not going to go in and okay, Glenn Whelan, I don't think he'll be given a chance. I think we might have seen the last of Glenn Whelan. But other than that, you'll see lots of going around the internet now, predicted Stephen Kenny lineups and who should play. And, people are picking a team of teenagers, and you're like, it's not going to be that way. So Conor will have the chance to prove himself just as everyone else will.
You made a good point there with Aston Villa, I suppose, this season. I think Conor's 7 goals from midfield. He's their second top goal scorer behind Jack Grealish, but he was definitely in and out of the Villa team, especially after that loss to Man City. I don't think he started for 4 or 5 games. But when it comes to Stephen Kenny in Ireland, like Derby talks about philosophy, kind of Mick McCarthy had his structure and Stephen Kenny will have his style. And it seems that Stephen Kenny's style is more to keep the ball on the ground. Would that be fair to say? Is that something that could suit Conor Hourihane, the fact that he might actually get on the ball more and be able to influence the play a lot more than maybe he was under Mick McCarthy's style?
Completely. He's got a great left foot, and look, he can handle himself. He's not lightweight at this level, but he's not the most physical of players either. And yeah, no, absolutely, that style of play should absolutely suit him. And we go back to, midfielders' passes often are made to look good by the person on the end of them, and it's just with the way McCarthy's team played, it was all frantic and frenetic and all kind of random. And especially on the left, James McLean was picked because he was great at going back, but sometimes from your wingers, you don't want that. You don't want them doubling up as a left back, because it actually can bring more pressure onto you. And then it gives him more ground to cover, and he won't be in a position to, be slipped in behind. Like, you can imagine Conor Hourihane in the midfield playing balls, like really good passes with his left foot in between the fullback and, say, the right-sided centre-back. And Kenny's teams are going to be set up to play that way. I mean, he'll pick a forward, a pretty strong, muscular number 9, to run off the defenders and run into channels, and then you'll see wide attackers cutting in, playing relatively narrow. And you'd imagine Hourihane with his left foot is the kind of player that could pick out those passes and be very effective.
What are your own thoughts on Stephen Kenny taking over now? Like I said at the start, Gavin, it's a live sports story, and it probably came out of the blue a small bit. We probably weren't expecting this for another couple of weeks or another couple of months, that Mick McCarthy's reign would be ended and Stephen Kenny just takes over now. Is it the right call at the right time, or should Mick have been left finish out this qualification process in that game against Slovakia, whenever that would be played?
I'm looking at this yawning void of sports news and thinking, God, why didn't the FAI drag this out for a few weeks longer? But to be fair to them, they've acted swiftly and decisively. And I think in a very difficult circumstance, I think they've made the right call. It makes sense financially, first of all, because Stephen is actually being paid much less than Mick. And I think they made the right... Look, it was difficult, obviously, but they inherited an utterly ludicrous situation in which there were 2 managers contracted. And to be fair, John Slane and the old FAI board cannot be blamed for not foreseeing a global pandemic, the likes of which we haven't seen in a century. Okay, fair enough. Let's not blame them for that. But you couldn't have, the contracts were time dated. Mick's was up on the 31st of July, Stevens was up on the 1st of August. So the text of the agreement, they decided to stick to that. The spirit of the agreement, you could say Mick deserved to stay on for the Euros, but it wasn't a clean-cut thing, because the chances are that the Euros playoff will be played after the Nations League campaign, and possibly even after qualification the 2022 World Cup. So you couldn't have a scenario in which Mick ends up taking charge of most of Stephen's campaign. I think, to be honest, I think Stephen should have been appointed after Martin O'Neill. Mick McCarthy was a safe pair of hands, but there's just a lot of continuity from Martin O'Neill, and you're continuing with something that just didn't work. So I think it was the right call. I'm extremely excited now, I have to say, by what Stephen brings. There's going to be big challenges for him in terms of dealing with the scrutiny. One small thing is the fact that he'll be living in Ireland. I mean, since I think Owen Hand and Brian Kerr are the only managers since I think John Giles started to actually live in Irish managers to actually live in Ireland, and that brings its own pressure. It's hard to get away from it. So that level of intensity, there'll be a level of scrutiny he's not aware of before, and there'll be people saying, "Oh, he's not got a CV. Like, these players won't respect his CV." Like, if they don't respect his CV, then they have no right to really be there. I mean, and that's isn't to say that they won't respect his CV. I think they will. A lot of the Irish players come from League of Ireland backgrounds. Seamus Coleman is the captain. He came from Sligo Rovers. Matt Doherty is possibly the best player, and he came from a League of Ireland background. He played with Bows. Most of the upcoming talent have played with Stephen already at 21s and respect him. So I think that it won't be an issue. And anyway, Damien Duff is on the ticket, so people will respect him. And they're already aware that he's not afraid to make big decisions, because if they look around and look at his backroom staff, Robbie Keane's not there. Stephen and Robbie Keane was contracted to be with the FAI for another 2 years, and he's not there because Stephen Kenny doesn't want him there. So that's Ireland's record goal scorer, and he's not there. So he won't be afraid to make big decisions. I think he'll be respected, and I think it's exciting because it's different. We're now finally going to have an Irish manager who talks about the Irish player achieving things because of the Irish players rather than in spite of them. McCarthy would never criticise his players and so on, but there was a poverty of ambition in how he played. O'Neill seemed to dislike most of the Irish players, to be honest, the way he talked about them, and he was always talking. And Trapattoni said there was, we've no league here, So it's just exciting for something different, really, and I hope he's going to be very successful.
You're after getting me excited now for the start of the Stephen Kenny reign, Gavin. I can't wait. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. But while I have you on here with us as well, there's almost a solidarity, I think, with sports journalists at the moment, because, and we touched on it here, there is no live sports. So we're all having to shake that box of ideas and that can of ideas that we have to keep our readers and listeners entertained. The 42 always have kept me entertained. Brilliant website. You do brilliant work up there. And people can still kind of, I suppose, help out, and you have a great membership package. Can you tell us a small bit about that and what people will get for that, and how they can subscribe to become a member of the 42?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, tell your listeners, editorially, we're heavily Cork biased because Adrian Russell is from Cork and he's our editor. And we've got Gavin Casey and Paul Dollery and more on the staff as well. Yeah, so, I mean, look, it's a tough time for media. I think anyone who read the Irish Times or saw the reports last week will realise that our company's having our own issues, and we've there's colleagues across the company are affected in a more profound way than us, but the 42 is scaled back for the time being in terms of in terms of just hours and the staff are keeping it so on. But the show is very much still on the road, and if you do want to support us, we've got our membership package. Members.the42.ie is where you'll find it and be able to sign up. It's a €5 a month, or boom tish, €42 a year, and you get loads for it. So everything on the 42 is free and remains so. But we've loads more. I do a podcast called Behind the Lines, where we talk to sports writers about their career, and they bring along their favourite examples of sports writing in an idea I totally didn't rip from Desert Island Discs, in case there are any BBC lawyers listening. But Rugby Weekly and Rugby Weekly Extra continues with Murray Kinsella and Gavin Casey. There's loads more. We're launching a few more podcasts. I'm doing another one with a guy called Seamus O'Reilly, who I worked with before, called Really Into Years, which is we pick a year and just kind of chat about the stranger and better moments of it. It's formatted nostalgia, I think, which we're all doing at the moment. And then there's loads more. Warriors, the GA series. There's lots in there. There's newsletters. I'm rabbiting on with this plug for long enough. But if you are interested, we'd be delighted if you could support us. Members.the42.ie.
So kind of just back everything that Gavin said there, like for all of our listeners, kind of 42 has done terrific work and will continue to do so. And like you mentioned, Adrian Russell, I suppose Adrian had a book out last year, The Double, at the same time I had a book out, Something in the Water, and they were both by Mercier Press. And we did a book signing in Bandon Shopping Centre in November. And it's worth asking Adrian about our giant book signing. We were inundated that day with people queuing up for the book. So there's a story in that in itself. but that's really scraping the bottom of the barrel, Gavin. So I'd leave that till really late in the summer before you get to that. So thanks so much for joining us. Brilliant chat.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to all things sport in West Cork. Don't forget to pick up this Thursday's Southern Star newspaper, including our award-winning sports section with everything a West Cork sports fan could want. In shops across West Cork and online from anywhere in the world via www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper. The Southern Star and the Star Sport Podcast, #1 for sport in West Cork.
Welcome back to the Star Sport Podcast, and before we take a look at what's to come in this week's Southern Star Sports section, we have to touch on the biggest talking point in West Cork sport over the last few days, and that is, of course, Pitch Perfect, our search to find the best GAA surface in the entire region. Kieran, you've been running daily polls, various group stages, a lot of interest, a lot of uptake. What can you tell us so far?
The uptake has been fantastic. There's been huge interest in this, Jack. Like you said, it's our search to find the best pitch, best playing surface in West Cork GAA. So that takes in the Carbery division and the Beara division. We held a live draw on last week's podcast, and it's a World Cup style. Basically, there's 8 groups of 4. Top 2 progress from each group into the last 16, and it's knockout stages from there on in right through to the final. So already there's been a couple of very strong performers. Castlehaven topped Group A, very strong performance there. With O'Donovan Rossa came out on top in Group B, and St Mary's have topped Group C. In Group D, I think it was either Clonakilty or Bandon, both of them progressed. So some of the top pitches are coming to the fore here, and they are progressing to the knockout stages. And what I'm looking forward to when we get to the last 16, Jack, it's going to be knockout from there on in. And already we have one last 16 tie is Castlehaven against Carbery Rangers. When these two meet in the Senior Football Championship, sparks fly. And now there'll be a competitive element to this too, albeit on an online Twitter poll. But you have a Haven and Ross West Cork derby in the last 16. So it's brilliant. The reaction and the feedback so far has been very, very positive. It's basically, we're going to have a bit of fun with this because we have no competitive sport at the moment. So this will help us pass 3 weeks. We'll have a bit of crack. It highlights how good the pitches are here in West Cork too. And what I've really enjoyed is the different clubs and different people attached to different clubs have put up pictures of their playing surfaces. Let's say Tuesday's draw at the moment is Group E, and that includes Argyle, Argyle Rangers, Bear Island and Kilbrittain. And Argyle, Bear Island and Kilbrittain have all posted, there's all been pictures of their pitches posted, and they look fantastic. So all the pitches are they're the real winners in all this. Of course, we will have one overall winner, but it's just great to see, I suppose, something competitive in a time when there is no competitive sport. So all going well so far. We'll have the group stages finished off by the end of this week. Then it's straight into the last 16. There's no let up here, Jack. There's no days for pitches to gather their thoughts, prepare for the last 16. We're straight in to the knockout stage of this, and it's going to be some huge derbies I can actually already see on the way up to the next couple of weeks. There's a potential Castlehaven Skib derby in a quarter-final if both of those can emerge from their last 16. So plenty of talking points in the weeks ahead.
Well, very diplomatic of you there, Kieran, saying that the real winners here are the pitches. Something very Shooter McGavin-esque about that. But yeah, if people want to get involved, they can just hop onto Twitter and follow Kieran, or not follow Kieran, whichever. The polls are open to all. And just remind us of your Twitter handle, Kieran, just so I don't butcher it. Where can people find these polls?
It's on Twitter, Jack, and it's at Kieran Mac, KIERANMCC_SS, which is for Southern Star. So it's at Kieran Mac _SS. You'll find me there. And please feel free to follow me. I'm never slow to reject followers, Jack. As you know, I'm all about myself. So the more followers I have, the better. So feel free to follow me and just vote on the polls. Vote on every poll every day, even if it's not your club involved in the group stage or the last 16. Just have your say. And the take-up so far has been huge. Like, we're having 600, 700, 800 people voting every day on these different polls, which is a massive take-up. So get involved, and at the end of the day, we'll find what the people of Twitter feel is the best pitch, best playing surfers in West Cork.
Yeah, absolutely. Get on. It's a bit of crack, and as Kieran says, at the end of it all, hopefully we'll have an agreeable winner. But before we wrap up today's show, as always, we're just going to take a quick look at what's coming up in this week's sports section. And Kieran, you set me on a few things to get the juices flowing, and I have to say, as always, I'm very excited about the finished product. So what can people look forward to this week?
Even though there is no live sport, as we keep saying, that hasn't stopped the Star Sport 16 pages again this Thursday. One of my favourite features in this Thursday Star, Jack, is I've picked a 1 to 15 a GA team of, I suppose, West Cork sports stars who played GA at one stage of their careers but don't know that they've excelled in different sports. So we mentioned Conor Hourihane there. He was kind of in primary school, he was a real kind of blossom talent in Cork football, and he's taken the centre forward slot on this team because Brian Hurley was telling me before about Conor Hourihane, because they played in the same kind of primary school's football team for Cork, and he said that Conor could have been the difference with a lot of Cork underage teams on the way up, that he was that good a footballer. The likes of John Hodgett, Dean Wycherley, Inya Breen from Skibbereen was a super footballer with the O'Donovan Rossa ladies. So we picked a 1 to 15 and have a manager too. So it's a different sort of piece. It's interesting when you see how many sports people actually started off in GA and now are excelling in different sports. For example, Fineen Wycherley, that Cahill giant, actually, who's now playing Munster, played underage with St. Columb's. He was a fullback in the St. Columb's football team all the way up to under 16, and he won a couple of West Cork and county titles there. So it's just a different piece. It's interesting. So that's in this Thursday Star. I also talked to John Cleary of Castlehaven GA fame about the 1983 Munster senior football final between Cork and Kerry. This is the latest in our series of classic games. That's a very famous game that fans will remember because they stopped Kerry's bid for 9 in a row with a late famous Taddy Murphy goal. So John Cleary's thoughts on that game, it's well worth to read. It was his first Munster final, his first season with the Cork seniors, and he just talks us through the build-up, how Cork weren't given a chance, and his thoughts and memories of the game itself. I've also caught with Emily Hegarty. She is one of the Skibbereen rowers who had her sights set on trying to qualify for this year's Olympics that have obviously been postponed to next year. And it's basically a chat about Emily's career to date, from when she started off when she was 10 to where she is now, when she's on the cusp of becoming Skibbereen Rowing Club's first female Olympian. Obviously, the O'Donovan brothers and Eugene Coakley, Richie Coakley and Timmy Harnedy have all represented Ireland at the Olympics, but we've never had a female Olympian from Skibbereen Rowing Club. So Emily still has a great chance of that, because there's still an opportunity for Rowing Ireland to qualify the women's 4 for next year's Olympics. So it's a good chat with Emily Hegarty, a very interesting character. Just touching over a couple of small things, because there's a lot in there this week, Jack. It's great value again. Joe McCarthy has spoken to Cork senior footballer and O'Donovan Rossa footballer Laura O'Mahony on her career to date. I caught up with Alan O'Shea. He's the well-known Bantry runner who won the Cork Marathon back in 2007, who is also a doctor. So it's a very interesting take from Alan on this, I suppose, this ongoing battle with COVID-19, because he's on the front line. He can see it every day. His wife Suzanne, who qualified as a dentist, has gone back in as a nurse at the ICU, and she's treating COVID-19 patients. So Alan makes a great point, saying that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We can't get complacent. He kind of refers back to when he's running. He said if he's winning a marathon after 24 miles, he never lets up, because he knows a marathon is 20.2 miles. So he goes, we have to get to the finish line. But he said the good news is that there will be a finish line. So it's a really interesting take, and it's another local angle on the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. And also, Jack, you'll be glad to know Orla Cronin is back in with another delicious recipe this week. She's given us healthy banana bread. She gave us her chicken and chickpea curry last week, and now she's come back with a healthy rhubarb tart. And again, it's just mind-blowing. It makes you want to bake this food first and eat it. It's just she's knocking it out of the park, Orla. She's doing a great job. So they're just some of the highlights, Jack, and there's plenty more in there besides. So this week's Southern Star, again, packed with the best of West Cork sport on sale Thursday morning.
Yeah, as Kieran said, the Southern Star will be in shops across West Cork and far beyond from Thursday morning. And if you can't make it to the shops for whatever reason, you can also pick up a digital copy online. Just go to www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper, and if you prefer to read the physical copy, we can deliver it to your front door via a postal subscription. To avail of our postal subscription service, just call 028 212 00 and ask to be signed up to a postal subscription. And I'm actually quarantining myself, for lack of a better phrase again, in County Limerick at the minute, so I'm actually not in West Cork. So I myself have availed of the postal subscription service, and it arrived on my doorstep at 9 o'clock last Friday morning. So you won't be waiting around for weeks on end to get your Southern Star fix. 24 hours after it's in shops in West Cork, it can be at your house anywhere in the country, or in West Cork if you're just quarantining yourself in your house down in Calekill or over in Castletown, So if you want it, just call 028 212 00. And Kieran, before we wrap up this week's show, just on a food theme, since you were talking about Orla's recipe, which is in this week's Star, it's Easter this weekend, Easter Sunday, of course, and I know you're a glutton for the chocolate and the sweets, so I just wanted to ask, what is your Easter egg of choice? What will you wake up to on Sunday morning, and would you be disappointed if you get the wrong Easter egg? So yeah, just tell us, what's the Easter egg you crave most?
It has to be Cadbury's Easter egg, Jack. Just has to be. Kind of, I know Nestle and all those they're nice, but Cadbury's have the best Easter egg by far. And my Easter egg of choice would be a twirl. It would be a twirl, I have to say. Kind of, it's just a classic. It's the perfect package. Oh yeah, because you're getting the bars and you're getting the Cadbury's Easter egg, or a Buttons Easter egg. I'm a bit of a child at heart as well, so I wouldn't say no to Buttons Easter egg, but they're rather on the small side. So splurge on a bigger Easter egg, and especially with what's going on at the moment, we should enjoy Easter Sunday. Get an Easter egg for yourself, an Easter egg and the Southern Star after your Sunday roast. With Easter Sunday, can it get much better than Jack? Can it get much better than that, Jack? Even I don't think it can. It's the perfect Easter Sunday in lockdown Ireland.
Absolutely, and I have to say, your shout with a twirl is a good one, because I think a twirl is an underappreciated chocolate bar. And I'm just looking, I have a cup of tea here beside me right now. I don't actually have a bar of chocolate alongside it, but just the word twirl, it goes perfect with a cup of tea, a twirl bar that is, and then the Cadbury's Easter egg alongside it. Perfection, really. And as you said, a copy of the Southern Star sports section to leaf through as well. But we'll leave it there for this week. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport Podcast. We'll be back at some time on Friday. It'll be our second edition of the Classic Game series, where we'll be revisiting the 1983 Munster final, as Kieran said. So keep your eyes peeled across thesouthernstar.ie for that one. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to the show.